That's my ibuprofen in my pocket.
There's another 5 sheets, isn't there?
Ladies and gentlemen, it was an honour and a privilege when I told my parents that I would be doing this speech. Yes, that's right, I told them as there was no way I would miss an opportunity to be the centre of attention and muscle in on somebody else's day. It's my intention to keep it shorter than my other speeches. Well, where do I start? Well, I've known Rosie and Jim all of my life. I'm under no illusions that it has always been simple, and they have obviously encountered tough times, but it's a testament to them that I can barely remember a smashed plate or a thrown cup, but can look fondly back on a wealth of good times. Having both come from humbler beginnings, it was their aim to provide Dawn and myself with all of the advantages they missed out on, working extra and long hours to be able to. This work ethic has continued so that they can provide for their grandkids. It is through their influence that I have moulded myself, and it has shaped my life. I have learned from my dad that why do today what can be put off until tomorrow? Or at least until Rosie's nagging gets too much. Then I learned from my mum, if something needs doing, then blow your top and it gets done. It is this balance that has kept them together so long, either that or the cost of divorce. 40 years is a long time, so long in fact, there was actually a trophy in time and wear. Even Nelson Mandela managed to be released in less than 40 years. A wise person once said, there are only 2 things in life you can count on, death and taxes. We're all privileged enough to be able to add Rosie and Jim to that list. So folks, can you please charge your glasses, and this toast is to the magnificent couple, Rosie and Jim.
Rosie and Jim. I wonder if I was doing that for you.
And now, well, firstly, I'll just give you a quick explanation why it's taking so long. There's an oven broken down in the kitchen. So, we'd like to thank everyone for coming to help us celebrate our 40 years of marriage. We really appreciate that you've taken the time and made the effort to travel here for us. As you know, I was opposed to having a party, but was in agreement when Rosemary knocked the hell out of me.
Very good fun.
We've asked you all today because all of you have in your own way been a great inspiration in making us the people we are today. Always be open to compromise. Rosemary is, as long as I compromise to what she wants. We've tried to make today as entertaining as possible for you by setting up some displays depicting our 40 years together and some conversation pieces such as the music choice and the trivia boxes on the tables. For the young people, we hope that we give you an insight into how much times have changed. A time before flat screen TVs, computers, mobile phones, Xboxes and whatever else must-have electronic gadgetry there is today. When Rosemary and I met, our parents weren't wealthy, so anything we wanted we had to work and save for. Parents were very strict and there were curfews for kids even when they were teenagers. Rosemary was 15 when we met and her curfew was to be at home by 9 o'clock. She wasn't old enough at first to get into a pub. They weren't like they are today, with kids' play areas and food served all day. They were just pubs. So we used to go for walks or visit family, including aunties and uncles, or after I'd saved and bought my first motorbike, a Triumph 650 Thunderbird, complete with sidecar, we would go for motorbike rides.
I remember that.
Or we would just stay in her house with her parents and 3 brothers. Rosemary was allowed special concession on her curfew for us to go to college dances or when we went to Peterlee to visit my family, as long as I asked her dad's consent beforehand. and should be allowed to stay out until 10:30. Of course this changed when she became 16, but she still wasn't allowed to stay out longer than 11 o'clock, unless there was an exceptional reason. When we got married 2 years later, Rosemary was earning a grand weekly wage of £5.75 and I was earning £34 a fortnight in the RAF. So needless to say that when we got our married quarters, Rosemary had to leave her job, so things were a bit tight. What we used to do to save money was get a lift to Newcastle for one of my colleagues and then stay with Rosemary's mum and dad for the weekend. One Sunday night when we returned home, we had nothing in to eat. We had a tin of mince or something useless like that, and if I remember rightly, a piece of cheese. Some flour and a few bits and bobs in the cupboard, staples, but nothing that would make a meal. Anyway, we decided to have pancakes. Neither of us had ever made them. I was only 20 and always had meals cooked for me. She was 17, and although she could cook, some things she'd never had a need to cook pancakes. She went off to light the Park-Ray fire to get the house warm, and I set about cooking the pancakes with flour and water. We didn't have any milk, and we didn't have any eggs. When I took the mixture in to show Rosemary, she started laughing, but I was insistent that it would be all right. She refused to try it, but I did, and yes, you're right, it was just paste. We laughed for most of the night at that, and are still laughing about it 40 years on. Fortunately, a few weeks later, Rosemary started working on the base, firstly in the officers' mess and then in the sergeant's mess. And we've never been so hard up that we had to eat paste again. Our priorities changed when Dawn and Stuart came along, and we were going to make sure that they could have all the things that we couldn't as kids. You know, the way you do. They were good kids and never wanted anything because Rosemary always made a point of stating, "I want never gets," and explained what that meant to them at an early age. They did, however, need a lot of things. We wanted to make sure that they could go on all the school trips and activities that were going on. One day, Stuart was doing his "Mum, can I have a rabbit" speech routine and doing Rosemary's head in about the money for the trip to Derwent Hill. That she snapped at him to shut him up and told him not to mention it again, so he didn't. When we went to school for the parent evening some weeks later, after we'd completely forgotten about it, and there, to our horror, were pictures of all the kids in his class at Derwent Hill. How guilty did we feel? Needless to say, he was compensated for it, but we've never lived that one down. Then Rosemary decided to turn into Uncle Buck when Dawn was a teenager, and if she wasn't at the agreed place at the time arranged to pick her up, Rosemary would go off inside Chambers or somewhere similar. We always knew where to find Dawn. Clearly the kids were our priority, but we never lost sight of each other and the importance of our marriage. There's no handbook that comes with marriage or relationships. You just have to work at it. For us, what made our marriage last this long is love, and when you read our story, you'll understand this. Trust, and if for any reason this wavered, there's always been forgiveness. It's important to be able to forgive and move on. What's past is past. Dwelling on it is not going to make it unhappen. Patience, and boy have I had to have some patience. Even Saint Monica would be proud of me. I love you, but you do push your luck sometimes. But most of all, friendship. Throughout the early years, our friendship really blossomed, and has been strong ever since. We support each other in decisions, troubles and problems. We make each other laugh and always expect the unexpected from one another to keep the element of surprise. To us, this is marriage, and we believe the key to why we have lasted for 40 years. And if all else fails, you just learn to say yes, dear.